We're all going to get better acquainted with these two incredible role models while I ask them for their take on collegiate athletics, their professional successes, community volunteering, and mentoring. So we're all going to prepare to get schooled right now thanks to these two greats alongside me. As we begin this portion of the program, we want to start by addressing something that has been a theme of the evening. President Elsner often refers to collegiate athletics as the ultimate leadership laboratory. For each of you, as you look at your own experience in collegiate athletics, how did that mold those skills, those traits that you would need to be successful leaders in your respective industries?
Well, can everybody hear? Okay. First, before answering the question, I want to say thank you very much to Marion for honoring and recognizing me. It's a real privilege to be here. I've observed and watched Marion's growth over the Dan Elsner presidency, and it's truly remarkable. I do have a few connections I just want to mention to Marion. First of all, those Sisters of St. Francis. I don't know if any of them are here tonight, but I first met them in first grade at Little Flower High School on the east side. And then it was all the way through the 8th grade that I had the sisters, and then went to Cecina High School, and sisters taught almost every class. And so their values, which I know this university is based upon and practices every day, those were planted in me very early. And a second connection, which is sort of a trivia point, is my first basketball coach at Cecina was Walt Fields. Walt Fields was the first basketball coach, I believe, here. He taught Cecina for the first 3 years and coached there, and it was a difficult time because we started the school with just freshmen and then freshmen and sophomores. But Walt was my the first basketball teacher, and later came here and spent 15 years as a coach, athletic director, and other roles, and I believe he's in your Wall of Fame. So I feel very close to Marion through both of those connections, and again, thank you for recognizing me. In terms of how athletics helps you in your life, I have to say Joe Clayton had it right when he founded this or started this, endorsed this, recognizing that leadership and character, which are essential qualities in life and no matter what role you take, they blossom, they grow, they develop in what's called the laboratory, I guess, of athletics. But whether it's a laboratory or not, that is where you do learn a lot of those important lessons in life, and it's about leadership and character. And I'm not just talking about those few athletes who go on and have a wonderful career and make millions of dollars. That's 1% or less of college athletes. The other 99% go on to careers in law and teaching and in a variety of fields, and they're really where this all plays out and society benefits so much. One of my mentors, a past president of Purdue named Fred Hovde, who was president when I was there, and his daughter is with us tonight. He used to say, and I remember this quote, that when you're really faced with the tough decisions in life, the really big issues, the pressure is really not on your intellect, the pressure is on your character. And I think that's a great message. Character is important. Athletics teaches it, whether it's how to perform under pressure, whether it's accountability to your teammates, accountability to your coaches, accountability to your school. It's about teamwork. It's about all aspects of bouncing back from defeat. It's who you are, and that plays out every day in my life. It plays out, I believe, every day in the lives of people who've been privileged and could experience playing intercollegiate athletics. So.
Wonderful. Allison, for you, gymnastics is certainly one of the most demanding, mentally difficult sports. How did your experience in collegiate gymnastics help prepare you for those leadership roles that you would tackle at multiple levels within sports management?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. I want to thank Dan and Deb for recognizing me for this honor. I feel incredibly privileged and honored to be in this circle, so thank you, and it's great to see everyone here tonight. To echo what Tim said, you know, all the character, the integrity, all the things that you learn from sports, for me, I absolutely feel like I am a product from the things I learned in sports. And everything that I am able to do as a leader is a result of those lessons that I learned. One example I'll give you is I learned early on as a gymnast that the gymnasts who were the best listeners always did really well. They got better quicker than the ones that weren't listening well. So I learned to be an active listener at a young age. And there's a number of folks in this room that have worked with me in a variety of different jobs, and I hope they also agree that I'm an active listener, because I think that's an important part of being a good leader, to really hear what your employees and what your people are saying and getting feedback. And I know for me, I was always watching the gymnasts that listened well, and they improved quicker, so I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a good listener.
So I know all of those current student athletes, you've had ears open this entire time, right? Listening very, very well. For each of you, what is one particular experience that you had during your competitive careers that is something you often look back upon, you reflect upon as being particularly impactful, and that you continue to draw from in your professional experiences?
For me, when I got to college, I grew up in Maine. I'm a maniac. Any other maniacs in here? Not one. Okay, I'm the only one. I went far away to school. I went to Colorado, and the thing that probably stands out and I reflect upon the most in my adult life is I got to campus. We had our first gymnastics practice, and while we were warming up, our coach sat down with each of us and really wouldn't let us get going on the equipment till we sat down and she said, what are your goals for this year? And you know, as a young person, you sort of spit out your goals. I want to hit 4 for 4 at regionals. I want to make nationals. Blah blah blah. She kept slowing me down, saying, hoping to get to those goals is not a strategy. That's not how we're going to do it. We're going to take each goal. We're going to break it down, and we're going to make a plan for success on how you're going to achieve each of those. You don't just get from A to Z. And it really affected how I looked at my collegiate gymnastics career and how I work today. Goals are critically important. We all know that. But it taught me through that process with her how to actually build towards goals and make a plan for success, and not just hope when you set a goal that you're going to get there.
Wonderful. Tim, for you.
Well, I would go back and tell a story about a teaching moment, coaching moment that happened to me. Actually, it would be in high school. I mentioned Walt Fields coached us for the first 3 years. In my senior year, a new coach arrived named Joe Sexton. Joe Sexton had been a star at Purdue and was very young at the time, and he came into a program that had never had a winning season. And we were starting our season in the senior year. I was captain of the team. In the very first game, we were playing Tech High School on the east side. Tech was pretty good. We lost the game. We played horrible. I probably shot the ball 20 times and hit 4 or 5. Just had a miserable game, and it looked like it was going to be a repeat of our prior seasons. And the next day, I went in to see the coach and apologized for my poor performance. And I was telling him I won't shoot 20 times the next game, and went on, you know. And he listened, and he just sat there and he listened some more. And finally, he says, "Well, are you done?" And I said, "Yes, I'm done." And he said, "Well, listen, if you don't go out and shoot it 20 times the next game, you're going to be sitting on the bench next to me. Quit feeling sorry for yourself and get out there and do what I know you can do." That was a teaching moment. It happened, a turning point for me. I went on and had a great season. So did our team. We had a very good record. We played Crispus Attucks in the semifinals, who was the big team in those days, and they had just won the state championship. We lost in double overtime. I was the leading scorer in the city. I made the Indiana All-Star team to play Kentucky. and I got a full ride to Purdue on basketball. I'll never forget that particular point. And let me just add one more with Joe Sexton, who later becomes an assistant coach at Purdue. But I go off to Purdue in my freshman year. I'm really not very happy. Basketball isn't going very well. Back then, freshmen couldn't play. So in that case, you sat around and practiced with the varsity or tried to do whatever you could, but you never got any fun. All you did was work. Chemical engineering proved to be harder than I thought. I came from the small Catholic school on the east side. Here I am at this big university with all kinds of people I'd never had even been around before. So I came home and I said to my parents at Christmas, I'm going to change. I'm switching schools. I'm going to drop out of Purdue. They obviously called Joe Sexton, and the next day he's knocking on the door, front door, and of course he's invited in. And he sits down, talks to me again. He said, you stick it out for this year. You've already got halfway through. If you want to transfer, you do it at the end of the year. Well, I took his advice. I went back, and things couldn't have worked out better. I did a 180-degree turn on attitude, etc. Basketball improved. I got to have friends, joined the fraternity, all these things. But there again, just two teaching moments from a high school coach, and I remember him today, and I credit him today for what he taught me then, and I try to help other people in the same way.
Tim, you mentioned just how college basketball has changed and the fact that you weren't able to play, even as a freshman. Certainly something that's very different now as we're in the era of the one and dones. We're coming off what was such a thrilling NCAA tournament, of course, a great run for your Boilermakers. But how have you seen college basketball evolve over the course from your playing days to now?
Well, it would be dramatic. There were no one and dones in my era because you couldn't play as freshmen. It was one and sit. Watch the varsity play. But that would be one item. But earlier, Dan Elsner and I were walking around, and he was showing me the beautiful facility you have here in this new big weight room, and we were reminiscing about the fact that when I was playing basketball, you were told never to lift weights because it would get you muscle bound, and particularly if you were a shooter, it somehow would affect your shooting. Obviously, that's changed dramatically. They all bulk up. You see these muscular bodies, and they're shooting lights out. A couple of other significant changes, no shot clock. So we didn't have to worry about getting a shot off in 30 seconds, 35 seconds, whatever it would be. And yet we had no trouble scoring points. We averaged probably 70, 80 points a game. Defenses weren't as good back then as they are today. And of course, the dramatic effect of the three-point line. We did not have that. So most offenses were geared to getting the ball inside where, somebody could get 2 points by shooting it from 5 feet rather than shooting it from 20 feet. The three-point line has obviously changed the game dramatically. A couple of other things I just mentioned. Women's basketball has just grown dramatically, and thank goodness it has. It's such an addition, an appropriate addition to the sports scene. It wasn't so much back in the days when I was playing. And one other thing I would mention is the amount of money chasing sports today, particularly football and basketball. I'll give you an example that'll mention the point. When I played, and one of my teammates was a fellow named Terry Dishinger, who was the #1 draft pick that year. His signing bonus was $25,000. A few years later, I'm in New York, and Terry's playing in New York, so we arranged to go out for dinner with Jerry Lucas, who had played at Ohio State and was playing for the Knicks. Terry was playing against the Knicks, but we all went out afterwards, and the talk of the dinner table was that there were 5 players on the Knicks then making $100,000 a year. Obviously today, that's exploded. And it doesn't come without its dangers. I think I would at least issue a caution that we're in sort of an arms race with money in basketball, the arms race in terms of coaches' salaries, in terms of facilities, a lot of money, and and that attracts some bad elements at times. So that needs to be changed in some direction. I wouldn't have a recommendation, but anyways, all those things have changed. I'm a fossil from the past.
Well, you appropriately mentioned women's college basketball. We see those national championship banners hanging so prominently here on the court. Allison, I want to ask you, in your experience, how have opportunities for women in sports evolved over your course of being a student athlete, then to being a leader in sports business, in sports media?
Well, I've been in this career for 35 years, and as I look back at all the years, really when I got into sports management, there were very, very few women that were in any sort of sports administration roles. But one of the reasons I moved to Indiana was an amazing female, Sandy Knapp. I know many of you know Sandy, that I met when I was living in Colorado, and she talked about the sports movement in Indianapolis, and she was larger than life in her passion for what this city could do for sports and trying to get young professionals to move to Indianapolis to start with this whole sports tourism. So Sandy was a great role model for me right from the get-go. She is really, and I tell her this when I see her, part of the reason that I became a Hoosier. And then once I got here, this community was very welcoming for women in sports, and it's been a great career for me. As I look across the country nationally, it's changing all the time and evolving. And when I had the opportunity to run the Super Bowl here and be the CEO, I was only the second woman in 46 Super Bowls to lead a CEO. And since 2012, there's been 5 more women. So I think it's definitely progressing. I think it's important for our young women to see that women can lead sports just as well as men can. And so I'm proud of that legacy and hoping that with all the young women that we keep getting into sports, they're going to be as passionate about it as I've been.
I know that there are many people out there who consider each of you to be mentors, to be role models. In your experience as student athletes, who were your mentors, your role models, and how did they continue to impact you long after your athletic careers had wrapped up?
For me, professionally, my Jack Swarbrick, who's now the athletic director at Notre Dame, has been an incredible mentor for me and continues to this day. And I met him as one of the first folks that when I came to Indianapolis. So he's been a great business mentor for me. My gymnastics coach in college, those of you who are student athletes that are here, coaches have so much influence on you, and they really help shape your character. And I was blessed by having 2 coaches that cared as much about me as a person as they did as a gymnast. And so that was an important part of my development, and I hope I take that into the business community as well, that I care about my employees more as people than as employees, because I think that personal relationship is really important. So I feel very thankful that I've had the great mentors that I have. Jack Swarbrick is an interesting mentor for me, and he's one of those gentlemen that has a soft voice, but when he speaks, it matters in volume. And he said some things to me in my 20s and 30s, and when you have mentors, you have to be willing to hear what they're going to say and know that they care about you, and they're going to say something that's going to give you some feedback on development. And I will always be thankful for Jack and the mentors that do speak truth to you because they care enough about you to develop you. And even when they say harsh things, like one time Jack told me in a loving way that I needed to learn to be comfortable in silence. He told me that because we were in a meeting and I was talking too much. And he pulled me aside and said, I love you, but you need to learn to be comfortable in silence as you develop in business. That's going to be an important tool for you. And I will tell you, I used that technique a lot during the Super Bowl with the NFL. I was comfortable in silence a lot when I didn't want to answer questions. So I'm thankful for those mentors that are able to speak truth to you.
which speaks to the importance of being able to take constructive criticism and implement it as well. How about your
Just
mentor?
like in athletics, when coaches do that to you, you have to take the constructive criticism.
Well, when it comes to mentors, I already mentioned Joe Sexton and a couple of high school experiences, but there were others as well. And one that I recall so clearly, Fred Hovde, who was president of Purdue at the time, and Fred loved athletics. He had been an All-American quarterback at Minnesota. He was a Rhodes Scholar, and then was president of Purdue. And he would come even to basketball practices, for example, and watch us. And so I developed a relationship with him through basketball and through the fact that my fraternity brother was dating his daughter. So I could always double date and get to meet Fred Hovde when we would go to their house. But in my freshman year, I mentioned some struggles getting oriented, but in my sophomore year, I made the decision in my own mind that I should switch out of engineering, follow a different academic path. Fred Hovde had also been a chemical engineer like myself, so I made an appointment and went to see him, and he listened to me, and he finally talked me through it, and he said, you know, engineering is what is a big strong point here at Purdue. You should stay in engineering. You graduate from engineering here at Purdue, and if you want to then go on to graduate school in another field or go down another path in your career, I'll help you. And so I took that advice. I finished the degree, and Fred Hovde was there for me in terms of writing letters of recommendation for grad school, other letters of recommendation, and was there throughout the rest of my life until he died. So I would raise him up as one. And then one other story that relates to my Purdue experience, a man named John Alexander, who was the father of my fraternity brother, and in fact the father of a teammate of mine on summer baseball teams. And he loved Purdue, and he loved Purdue athletics, and we had a relationship, and I would periodically go see him and talk to him about things. And then one night, he and his wife and my wife Jane and I were out for dinner together, and in the course of the dinner he said to me, Tim, you need to become a Purdue trustee. Well, fast forward the story, I ended up serving 20 years and 16 years as board chairman, and it all started with that conversation. And I just add one other terms of athletic experience. I mentioned the board of trustees. When I was on the board, and this is true of Marion or whatever college you talk about, athletics is such a vital, important part of the university. It's the most visible part of the university. It's the part that is the front porch of the university. And you have 500 or 600 athletes out there who are representing the university. And the board needs to be involved, and we were involved, and it always was a source of great pride and attention to observe what was going on in athletics. We hired the coaches, we hired the athletic directors, and so it just has been a wonderful experience for me to have been a former athlete and then to have been in a role that could play a big part in Purdue's athletic program.
Following up on those impactful personalities, so impactful characters that you each experienced, of course, this Clayton dinner has celebrated so many prestigious honorees, you two among them. We talk about names like Peyton Manning, Elio Castroneves, Katie Douglas, many of those who are role models and who people consider to be their favorite athletes. Who are each of your just favorite athletes to have watched, to have experienced, to have interacted with?
Well, I'm a Purdue guy, so Drew Brees is right at the top, and I know him reasonably well. And I really say that not because of his athletic performance, which has been fantastic, but he is a great humanitarian. He has done so much for Purdue, so much for New Orleans when they had their problems, and he was right in the forefront of helping rebuild that. But Peyton Manning wouldn't be far behind. I served on the NCAA advisory board with Peyton. And two honorees from here served on that as well, Peyton and Jim Morris. And Jerry Semler's somewhere out in the audience. He was on that too, and we had a unique experience seeing athletics through the NCAA. But I would make one other point, though. My real role models aren't the athletes who go on and become celebrities and wealthy and conduct themselves properly, even though they're due great praise, and they do receive a lot of praise. Mine are the other 99% of student athletes who go on to become great engineers, great teachers, great business leaders, and use athletics. In fact, Dan Elsner's one, so are the two of you. Those are really the people that are the majority out there that are having influence in daily lives everywhere. And to me, I'd put them as a group really high on that pedestal of people I admire.
For me, I would say that Tamika Catchings is my favorite athlete, partially because she lives her faith out in her daily work and her play. And if you know Tamika and people describe her, they always talk about her character and her integrity and her compassion and her drive to impact. She overcame a lot of obstacles. She had a hearing problem, which caused a speech impediment problem, and overcome so many things to be the amazing role model that she has. I'm so thankful she's going to stay in this community. She just took a full-time job at the Fever, and this community is blessed to have her for many reasons. So she's my favorite. Give Tamika a big round here. We've talked a lot about Purdue tonight, and I did want to mention, if you didn't see in your program, that Larra was a great track and field athlete at IU. So those Hoosiers in here, make sure that you're giving Larra some love here.
Thank you, Allison, Tim. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to sit alongside each of you. This has been so wonderful. Can we give a huge round of applause for each of our honorees tonight? I certainly hope that each of you walks away feeling as inspired as I do right now, and there's some element of this evening that you're able to take with you and implement into your everyday life, your everyday careers, into your family.